Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about day 10 of New York versus Trump. The day in the main was taken up with the completion of the direct, then the cross, then the redirect of Keith Davidson, the attorney for Stromy Daniels, who also had been the attorney for Karen McDougal. And they, defense predictably went after him very aggressively, tried to portray him essentially as a shady operator, kind of on the edges of the swamp, just staying on this side of the law and maybe not even. So there was a lot of exploration of his other clientele, and typically celebrities like Hulk Hogan, and his, MO, as we saw for McDougal and Stormy, of basically using information to get clients money, which the defense called, just this side of extortion. But really, he essentially accused him of being, someone who skates exactly on the line of extortion and sometimes goes over. He had been the subject at Davidson of an extortion investigation. They established that. They asked him if he was familiar with the law of extortion or if he had familiarized himself. Davidson said no. In general, Davidson became, he was on direct a little bit standoffish, and, occasionally would say he didn't understand the question. He was not sort of forthcoming and eager to talk the way, say, David Pecker was, but it got more tense and kind of pitched on cross-examination. And he had a number of instances of not recollecting, a number of instances of pushing back against characterizations by the defense. So kind of as they had with Pecker, they just really, went after him in general. The jury did get to see the agreement there's both an agreement and a side agreement. The agreement itself was done with pseudonyms. Michael Cohen's idea, and it's signed, except not by Trump, who is got the pseudonym of, I think, David Dennison, in the who like a high school friend Davidson had testified, and who wasn't all that happy about it when he found out. But otherwise, they see an executed contract and also a side agreement, which is done with the actual names, including Donald Trump. To the extent that they had a real theme that they were pursuing, it was that Davidson, well, first they made a lot of Davidson's use of the word leverage, as in we would have no leverage over Trump after the election, which everyone assumed. Davidson pointed this out too, that he was going to lose, to sort of intimate that, not that Trump hadn't paid this stuff, but that he, had been sort of shaken down, as it were, which you could imagine being, the foundation of an argument of not having criminal intent. A lot of bad stuff continues to come out about Michael Cohen, who there's a conversation we hear, and another witness. As a quick aside, the defense continues its tactic of requiring the prosecution to jump through certain hoops that normally would be stipulated to, so the jury doesn't go through the sort of waste of time. But they had someone from the Manhattan DA's office come in and authenticate certain tapes they had as being the real thing. And there was a tape of a conversation that Cohen had made between him and Davidson, where he is really complaining bitterly about, he complained both about not getting paid the $130,000 back for a time, hadn't at all. Can you believe that effort is not even paying me? But then also, very, very upset about not getting a job in the White House. And Davidson's editorial comment was that he thought Cohen was going to kill himself. He was so upset. And then after the tapes had been authenticated, the jury, and this was the end of the day, heard several taped conversations, and most notably, they heard a snippet of the recording that Cohen made between him and Trump, where he said they needed to talk about our friend David, meaning David Dennison, the pseudonym that Cohen had chosen for Trump in the contract. The actual line is, I need to open up a company for the transfer about our friend David. So that's actually informing him about what Davidson and the banker, Farrow, had testified, Cohen going and opening up a whole new account with a so-called a shell real estate consultant company to actually get the $131,000 and transfer it to, as he eventually did, if late, to Davidson. The other maybe most noteworthy tape that they heard talked about buyers or settlers' remorse and the surprise and chagrin, arguably, at hearing that Trump had won the election when that all went down. So a series of tapes. We'll hear more that have been authenticated, and that was the end of the day. Highlight of the day is the fairly blistering but general cross-examination of Davidson, trying to portray him as just this side of an extortionist, and then the jury hearing for the first time the voice of Michael Cohen, about whom so many have said so much, and they really have to be primed for a very complex and, to most witnesses' eyes, challenging, not trustworthy. They've heard just quite a lot about him that I think will have piqued their interest quite a bit for when Cohen does show up. So, where does that fit in exactly with a impeachment of the actual testimony? It's not clean, but there's a notion perhaps of Cohen acting himself very aggressively to try to curry favor with Trump. And again, Trump not being the impresario as much as the passive, going along guy. Now there's a tape we will hear where a snippet between Trump and Cohen that Trump's being active is clear. And Davidson did testify his understanding that the money here was coming from Trump, but there's certainly a point here where Cohen is upset about not having been paid back, and that suggests he's fronting the money. So does that give rise to an argument that he's sort of doing it for Trump's own good, but not with Trump as the kind of moving force? There's another conversation we hear where Cohen says that Trump really hates that they paid off Stormy. And Cohen says, but everybody says it was the right thing, and you had to do it. So to summarize, they tried very hard to make Davidson look like a shady kind of swamp dweller who traffics in near extortion, if not quite, and then more really bad stuff about Cohen. And to the extent there's a general theory behind it or narrative that they could use in closing argument, it would be about Cohen acting on his own, Cohen having his own, more or less, Cohen having, being extremely ambitious and wanting to curry favor. Davidson thinking of this as a matter for leverage, and he says at one point, you have no idea how desperate Stormy is for this money. So, making it all seem like the pieces not that things didn't happen, but trying to portray it as basically Trump's being more of a secondary player as opposed to the moving force, even though it has to be, and everyone understands that the whole point here is to salvage his plummeting fortunes in the wake of Access Hollywood. So that's the main stuff. After Davidson was the DA office guy who authenticated the tapes, and then we heard a few tapes, and court ended. It had begun with the gag hearing that I told you about previously. And then tomorrow it's going to be a slightly short day. Day 11 will go till 3:45 because a juror has an appointment. But the headline will likely be for the day the very aggressive and somewhat effective. It's a matter of judgment and how it fits with what the jury is already persuaded of. But I think the headline will be basically a very aggressive and somewhat effective cross-examination of Davidson by Trump lawyer Emil Beauvais. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.